screen. So we would like to share that Enterprise Singapore's flagship event is actually back this year for the first physical session since the pandemic in 2021 when we had run a virtual event. So we had received a lot of feedback and we are happy to have it back to its full physical glory. It'll be held in Singapore. And as you can see on the screen, the dates are on the 29th of August to 31st of August. We will have a stellar lineup of business leaders that will discuss the latest trends in sustainability, in digital and tech, and also in manufacturing. So there is a QR code on your screen which you can scan that will take you to our ESPF registration website. Do not fret if you are unable to scan the code at this point of time. As a follow-up to the end of the meeting, we will be sending you further materials about the Africa-Singapore Business Forum. So feel free to have any questions or inputs. You may be able to share them after the webinar when we have sent you the post-webinar email. And I think at this point, let's give it perhaps 2 more minutes. At 4:05, we shall proceed with the webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar and waiting. It's 4:05, so we shall begin. As we have more attendees join in, we would like to start our webinar off proper. So today's webinar would be covering Africa's transport and logistic landscape, and we'll be diving deeper into the opportunities within West Africa. So to quickly go through the program outline of today's webinar, we'll first be having our Regional Director for our Accra Overseas Center from Enterprise Singapore, Ms. Jean Ng. She will help us to give a welcome and also provide some opening remarks before we pass the time over to Ms. Jeanette. So Jeanette's our Senior Business Development Manager, also with Accra Overseas Center, and she will take us through the sharing on today's topic. And before we close off the webinar, we will also have a short poll as well as a question and answer section. So just to set some quick ground rules, we will have a default mute setting. And this is also to give you a heads up that the webinar will be recorded. If there are any questions that you would like to prompt us on, you may use the Q&A function on the top of your screen, and you will be able to type out your questions there. So without further ado, I shall hand over the time to Jean, our Regional Director, who will take you through the opening remarks for today's webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, Mantaj. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean, the Regional Director based in Enterprise Singapore's Ghana's office covering the West and Central Africa region. Thank you once again for taking the time to attend this webinar on Africa's transport and logistics landscape with a focus on West Africa. The transport and logistics sector in Africa has raised about USD 200 million in the first 8 months of 2021 alone, following a record-breaking 2020 where the sector raised 21 million in funding. Upcoming trade corridor projects in West Africa, including the Abidjan-Lagos motorway, present opportunities in the transport and logistics connectivity sector. There has also been growing focus on enhancing supply chain following the pandemic. African countries have been improving their manufacturing capacities and transport infrastructure via projects such as Ghana's railway plan to build a 3,800-kilometer rail network is critical. Demand for quality warehousing and resilient distribution networks is also increasing to drive better cost efficiencies. Digitalization and the boom in e-commerce because of the large consumption base in West Africa is also reshaping and transforming the transport and logistics sector. Digitalization of logistics in the form of AI, cloud, and IoT solutions are streamlining cross-border supply chains. Growing internet penetration and emerging cross-border e-commerce markets are also boosting the West African e-commerce scene. Additionally, electric vehicles have also been on the rise in West Africa, with Ghana's comprehensive national electric mobility policy framework guiding the development and scale-up of EVs for the region. As such, it is very much exciting times ahead as the continent and West Africa's sub-region look to better develop the backbone infrastructure, which will further help to drive and implement the final vision of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So without further ado, let me introduce my colleague Jeanette, who will take us through the latest updates for this sector. Jeanette, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jean. Good afternoon to our companies, colleagues, and partners in Singapore, and good morning to my colleagues and partners in the region. My name is Jeanette Simenou, Senior Business Development Manager at Enterprise Singapore, based in Accra, Ghana. It is my honor and utmost pleasure to present this webinar today, which aims at highlighting Africa's transport and logistic landscape, specifically the opportunities in West Africa. For this presentation, the specific objective is really to identify the existing market challenges, trends, and opportunities in the West Africa's transport and logistics space, and then be able to map it to the capabilities offered by our Singapore companies. To do that, I will share 5 main points in my presentation. Africa AFCTA and its impact, the emerging trends in transport and logistics, the current state and existing market challenges of the transport and logistics sector, the current players, as well as the market opportunities for our Singapore companies. AFCTA, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, launched in 2021, is the largest free trade area in the world. It will connect 55 nations in Africa and 8 regional economic communities to form a single continental market with a population of about 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of approximately $3.4 trillion US. As part of its mandate, AFCTA is to eliminate trade barriers and boost intra-Africa trade, which will have a significant impact on African transport and logistic industry. Namely, it will boost intra-African trade, it will remove trade barriers and import costs, it will increase investment in infrastructure, and it will also improve e-commerce. This slide highlights some of the upcoming trade corridors project in West Africa. A notable one is the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, which is expected to boost trade in West Africa and have a significant impact on the economies in the region. It is a 1,028-kilometer highway project that will connect the capitals of 5 coastal countries, namely Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, accounting for more than 75% of West Africa trade. It links very vibrant seaports, serving all the landlocked countries in the region. The population along this axis will be the direct beneficiaries when the project is implemented. Being funded by the African Development Bank, the project is estimated at 15.6 billion US. And by linking some of Africa's largest and economically dynamic cities through the road, which will promote cross-border trade and integrate fast-growing economies within ECOWAS. The project is planned to be completed by December 2024. Zooming in, countries are also working to enhance connectivity with their neighboring countries. For instance, in Ghana, they have 16 infrastructure projects, out of which 10 are transportation projects, which ranges from rail, aviation, port, and water projects. In Senegal as well, there is a lot of infrastructure development and investment. In the port area, for example, DP World has signed an agreement with the government of Senegal to develop a deep water seaport, the port of Dayan in Senegal, for an investment of more than $1 billion US. The Senegalese government is also trying to restructure their bus network through acquisition of buses, construction of bus depots, construction of roads, and installation of modern ticketing, network management, and control system. In addition, there are development in the airport, rail, and road transportation as well. We are now going to delve a bit deeper into the emerging traits, emerging trends, and current states of the transport and logistics in West Africa. Emerging trends we note in Africa are digitalization, the booming e-commerce, as well as the shift toward digital payments. Digitalization of logistics include AI, cloud, and IoT, which widely used in technologies for prediction and planning of routes, for warehouse management, remote operations, tracking of shipments, just to name those. There are technologies already tested in the market, and those technologies include Kobo 360, which is Africa's innovation leader in integrated logistics solution and truck brokerage services. It aggregates end-to-end haulage operations to help cargo owners, truck owners, drivers, cargo recipients achieve an efficient supply chain network framework. There is also Zipline, which is an automated on-demand delivery system for rapid deliveries, especially to shoppers residing in remote areas. In 2022, Jumia, which is the Pan-African e-commerce company, partnered with Zipline to launch on-demand delivery in Ghana, with plans to expand the service to Nigeria and Côte d'Ivoire in the near future. JStream, which uses technology network and system to enable African businesses to quickly finance, manage, and monitor their regional supply chain. In addition, the Africa e-commerce market is expected to exhibit a growth rate of 26.5% during 2023-2028, which can be attributed to rising disposable income, growing internet penetration, and emerging cross-border e-commerce markets. Example of e-commerce companies across West Africa includes Jumia, Konga, and Gigi. The e-payment market will also grow by around 150%. And there are many e-payment platforms that sprouted up recently, including Orange Money, Paystack, ZPay, MoneyPoint, just to name those. Next, there is also a growing focus in enhancing supply chain resilience and an increased demand for quality warehousing, including cold chain. There were massive breakages in global supply chain during the pandemic, and route congestion, manufacturing shutdowns, lack of warehouse spaces, and a spike in transportation cost are some issues that were encountered. Many African countries have also begun looking at ways to improve their manufacturing capacity so that they can produce local components that don't need to be imported and that can be traded within the continent. Many countries embark on projects to improve their transport infrastructure, including the Abidjan-Lagos corridor highway we spoke about earlier, also Ghana's railway master plan and the development of deep water seaport in Senegal. Next, electricity is out of reach for over 640 million people, and food loss contributes to undernourishment in Africa, affecting about 1/3 of the continent's populations, and the needs for cold storage facilities have also led to an increase in the number of cold storage startups, including FreezyLink in Ghana, Cold Box Store in Nigeria, again, just to name those. Lastly, there is also a rising demand for quality warehousing, and many big logistic and warehouse players are expanding their warehousing space, including Agility, which is developing over 1 million square meters of warehousing across Lagos, Abidjan, Maputo, and Accra, and Agbara Logistic Park, which is developing additional 35,000 square meters to its already existing stock. E-mobility is a topic that is increasingly included in African countries' national determined contributions, which is at the heart of the Paris Agreement and the achievement of its long-term goals. Many African countries have signed on to international conventions and treaties aimed at promoting a greener future. Electric vehicles have emerged as one of the main options for decarbonizing land transport gas emissions and achieving a net zero emission sector by 2050. Ghana's comprehensive national electric mobility policy framework proposes a coordinated approach to developing electric vehicles, charging infrastructure, research and development, and service delivery. The sales of battery-powered motorcycles and scooters have also skyrocketed in countries such as Nigeria and also Kenya. According to McKinsey, they're expected to dominate sales on the continent by 2040, with a market share of 50 to 70%. As of the end of 2021, McKinsey estimates there were more than 20 startups in the ecosystem, which combined raised over $25 million in funding that year. M-Auto, Solar Taxis, and Nama Mobility are some electric vehicles companies that sprouted out recently. The Africa electric bus market is also a trend and was evaluated at $872.89 million in 2021. And it is projected to reach 1,548.44 million by 2027, registering a 10.26% increase during the forecast period 2022 and 2027. In April 2022, the Ministry of Transport announced plans to test electric buses in Ghana as part of efforts to decarbonize and achieve a net zero emissions. As a result, the Ministry of Importation is importing electric buses to test in selected cities. Oando and the Lagos government also enter a pact to launch electric mass transit buses. Weak transport infrastructure and trade governance, coupled with poor intra-Africa connectivity, are some of the factors that are limiting the transport and logistics sector in West Africa. The LPI is an interactive benchmarking tool created to help countries identify the challenges and opportunities they face in their performance on trade logistics and what they can do to improve their performance. Firstly, the LPI ranking of West Africa countries are relatively low, if not poor, even though Côte d'Ivoire has an overall ranking of 50, Ghana, Senegal, and Togo ranked around 100 to 140. The transport system in West Africa is weak, with poor construction and inadequate maintenance. Less than 20% of the roads in West Africa are paved. Overall, the railway infrastructure in West Africa is in poor condition. Aging infrastructure, tamping, and deficient maintenance have seriously impacted the operational performance, resulting in lower axle road, 17 tons, and slower speed, 30 kilometers. And African ports are still plagued with long cargo clearance times, underdeveloped port infrastructure, container and cargo theft. Logistics challenges include the lack of warehousing capacity, lack of cold chain infrastructure, lack of transport management experts, and suboptimal logistic processes. There is also poor trade governance and ecosystem, including underdeveloped postal systems, corruption, stiff regulatory environment, lack of widespread broadband access, and security issues. The transport and logistics industry in West Africa is dominated by multinational companies, but small local firms are on the rise. Some of the notable multinational companies that focus on end-to-end integrated logistics services include Maersk, DSV, DHL, and MSC. We do have local African companies as well, including Oma Group, Magdan Group, and also CSTAO, respectively, in Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal. In Ghana's seaborne trade, the top shipping agent as of 2019 is still dominated by multinational companies. Super Maritime Ghana, Maersk, Hull, Inchcape, and MSCA occupy more than 60% of the market share. However, the prospect of easier infra-trade commerce is boosting investment in transportation and logistics, and many African logistics startups have sprouted up. According to Baobab Network, the transport and logistics sector in Africa has raised funding worth $200 million in the first 8 months of 2021 alone. This comes after a record-breaking 2020, where the sector raised $217 million. One of the 37 funding rounds in 2021, 62% are either seed or pre-seed funding rounds with values averaging $50,000. The Baobab Network is an accelerator that backs early-stage ventures across Africa, providing founders with capital and a global platform to scale their business. Some of these logistics startups include Jetstream, Zipline, Faith Delivery, and Kobo. We're now going to share on the opportunities for our Singapore companies. There are already opportunities for Singapore companies supporting in supply chain technology development, quality warehousing, and cold chain. For digitalization trends, opportunities for Singapore companies include integrated supply chain platform, document digitalization companies, trade financing platforms, payment gateways, intellectual property protection and cybersecurity, business analytics, and customer management enablement services. To create a resilient supply chain, we have opportunities for cold storage logistic companies to offer cold chain expertise and facilities, and also opportunities for warehousing companies to build warehousing facilities and deploy efficient warehouse management solution. There are also opportunities for green mobility solutions for Singapore companies as electric mobility transition is taking place in sub-Saharan Africa. We could introduce our Singapore companies that focus on electric motorbikes, electric cars, electric battery operated ferries or ships, or charging infrastructure. Challenges we observe in the logistics sector and ecosystem also present opportunities for Singapore companies to help in the development of strong trade governance platforms and also to improve logistical efficiency. For instance, surveillance and monitoring system coupled with integrated supply chain platform, document digitalization, and vehicle tracking could help increase supply chain visibility. Warehousing solutions, cold storage expertise, training courses, fleet management, and integrated trade platform are all services that could be offered by our Singapore companies to address logistics sector challenges. With upcoming trade corridor projects, Singapore companies could support in infrastructure capacity building in the transport sector, including the port, road, and airport areas. Thank you very much. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Before we go to the Q&A, my colleague is going to show on the screen a poll that I would like you to take. Kindly do answer those two questions. It's important for us to have this feedback from you for the work that we are doing. Right after this poll, we will be able to jump into our Q&A session. Okay, do feel free to write any question that you might have in the chat, or feel free to ask any question that you might have. We are willing to answer it for you. Okay, looks like it's pretty clear for everyone. I mean, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to us directly. But else, if not, if you have some right now, please feel free. Mantej, I'm handing the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeanette. Yeah, so feel free to put in your questions. I think while we wait for any questions to come in, I would also like to take this chance to bring it up again that this year we will be having the Africa Singapore Business Forum taking place in Singapore from the 29th to 31st of August. So we'll be reverting to a fully physical format from the 2021 edition, which was fully virtual. So we're excited to have it back in its original glory, where you can have some face-to-face physical interaction. And we do have a really strong lineup for this year's event. On your screen, you will see a QR code that you may scan using your handphone, and this will lead you to the registration page for ASBF. Fret not if you are unable to scan it now. As a follow-up to this webinar, we will be doing a post-webinar email where we will provide further details on the Africa Singapore Business Forum and how you may register. And you will be also able to share any inputs or questions that you have on the event. Thank you. Yeah, so Jeanette, I do see a question from Niraj on the Lagos Abidjan Expressway. So Niraj is asking if there is a deadline for this expressway.
The deadline, the completion of the project is planned for 2024, but this is like the planned date. With anticipated delays, it might be extended. But as it stands right now, the completion date is estimated for 2024, end of 2024.
Thank you, Jeanette. Hope that answers your question. Any other questions, feel free to use the Q&A module at the top of your screen to send your question over, and we'll be happy to answer them live or even after the event. Maybe at this point, if you have any questions related to ASBF also, you may use the module to bring them up. We'll be happy to address questions as well. Okay, I think if there are no further questions, oh, I see another question from Niraj. So Niraj is asking, Kobo has already shut down or reduced operations in Ghana and other African countries. So he's asking how we can be assured of positive growth in logistics.
Thanks so much for this question. I mean, Kobo has shut down, reduced operation, yes, but we still see an increasing number of other startups in the sector sprouting up. So we do believe that there is a positive like foresight in that regard.
Thank you, Jeanette. We hope that answers your question, Niraj. So maybe I'll just give 30 seconds more to see if there are any final questions. Okay, I think then we are good to close off this session. I would like to thank everyone once again for attending our webinar today. We hope that it gleaned useful insights for you on West Africa's transport and logistics landscape. We will be sharing the deck with you, so fret not if you have missed out certain parts of the presentation. And of course, we'll be sharing further details of ASBF as well, what you're looking at the screen right now. So thank you, everyone. We will now conclude the webinar.
Thank you very much.